I found out I needed to undergo open heart surgery.
She is a powerhouse in entertainment and media, shared stages with icons like Michelle Obama, Tyra Banks, and Dr. Phil, has over 1 million followers. And today, for many people, right, into all ages, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you're just so scared to get started.
All of those pieces actually led me to where I am. And it's so challenging and you're facing obstacles all the time. But I think when you stay in tune with why you're here and what hope and light and life you can bring into the world, it changes the game.
All right, welcome back to Live 100. Very excited to have Rachel McCord on the show today. Rachel, how are you?
I'm so good. I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're excited to have you as well. Before we get into it here, a little bit about Rachel. She is a powerhouse in entertainment and media, shared stages with icons like Michelle Obama, Tyra Banks, and Dr. Phil, interviewed stars all the way from Kristen Cavallari to Dixie D'Amelio and the Bella Twins, has over 1 million followers and a nationally syndicated morning show reaching over 40 million households. She knows how to build a platform that moves culture forward. In 2013, she founded the McCord List, a community to empower women in fashion, entertainment, and entrepreneurship. And over the years, it's evolved into a trusted voice in the media. Today, that original mission has expanded into a bold new era, the McCord List Media Network, a platform designed to amplify stories that shape culture and inspire change. So, it was funny. I was actually talking about fear earlier on, right? And you said that you started your first company at 13. And my question for you, where was that confidence built in? Because today, for many people, right, into all ages, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you're just so scared to get started. For one thing, just fearful of failure, potentially fearful of just what other people will think. Where did your confidence come from that you at 13 jumped out?
Well, thank you for the question. Thank you again for having me on the show. Well, I would say first of all, I think I was so accustomed to fear. I went through a lot of trauma as a kid. So I've just always been the girl who felt insecure and had the introverted vibes and all the things and just decided to push past it. So I think I got really good at pushing my nervous system to the max and just
Wow.
being like, okay, we're just going to keep on pushing. So while I started working for someone else's company at 13, but at 16 was offered a position in management. Then at 18 was offered my own location. Ended up leaving and working for one of the largest PEOs in the world, ADP. I'm sure everyone's had a paycheck from them at some point. And then started my first company and then sold that when I was 24. So it was kind of just for me, like everything felt like the next thing that made sense, right? Like it just made sense to do this. It made sense to do that. I'd opened the restaurant Le Cave with Michael Morton, with Steve Wynn at the Wynn in Las Vegas. So it was like after that, I started working for Marquee. And then after that, I met someone and they wanted to form a partnership and launch a company. So I feel like I really, until I started the McCord List in 2013, I was always just climbing the accolade ladder and trying to do what made sense without really having a strategy on what I was trying to build.
Yeah, that's great. So when you say makes sense, right? What is that feeling when like, what is it that tells you like this is what to go for?
Well, I think it's always about, so first of all, I would say that part of that is tied into what are you really attributing to success, right? What does success look like for you? Because for me, I grew up in trailer parks in Georgia. So I wanted to succeed in the space of like actually feeling like I was getting away from where I come from. I was moving in a direction that was like creating success financially, things that were brag worthy. To be honest, like that's just not a great way to say it, but it's kind of the truth. I was really struggling, I think, with self-worth. And so, I got a show on Bloomberg television. I said yes to it because, of course, you say yes to a show on Bloomberg. And then I was invited to have a big Jumbotron in Times Square because we filmed at NASDAQ. So it was like on that big wall. You say yes to these things because it makes sense, right? But it wasn't until 6 months after that big moment in Times Square that I found out I needed to undergo open heart surgery, that I had the surgery. Spoiler alert, I survived. And then after that, I started thinking, okay, like I should do things a little bit differently. I should think a little differently about what I'm actually building towards. Like, what am I really trying to create in my life? And that's where I think things got a little bit more intentional. Even though I had already had the McCord List for a long time, I think I got even more like locked in on what success looks like to me.
I think one of the pinnacle thing is keeping people away from success is that they're not actually looking hard into what success is, right? Many times we want a success that sits out there into this universe that's potentially somebody else's success, and then we're not fully going after it because we're not fully entwined in what that success looks like. So was there a moment throughout this, and it sounds like you've given us a number between the heart surgery and other points where it felt completely wrong, but at some part you continued to push through it regardless because you had something in the back of your mind saying, you know what, I just have to keep going to see where this turns out.
Yes, I think for me, it was probably a deeper calling that I feel like I get to do today. I get to speak life into people, building the media network and producing over 20 shows now. Like, we're so busy, like helping people who have incredible voices, voices that are bringing light and inspiration to the world. Like, we're helping these people like find their way. And for me, that's very inspiring and exciting. So I think in some cases, I'm a God girl, I'm a faith girl. So I think in a lot of ways, like I've had just this supernatural guidance that, like, against all odds, when everything was falling apart, when everything was hard, it was almost like there were these little steps along the way that, like I said earlier, they made sense. Like, to me, they made sense for different reasons. But in hindsight, all of those pieces actually led me to where I am. And you start thinking about, a lot of people say this, and I also say it now too, but like, I am grateful for all the adversity because I genuinely see how it's helped me grow as a human. It's helped me help other people grow. It's gotten me out of like the thought of like, oh my goodness, like this happened to me. It's actually more like genuinely like how grateful I am. Like, I have my son now. It's like so exciting for my husband and I get to like pass these lessons on to our child and help him to think as an entrepreneur, to think creatively, strategically. So I think you kind of just have to almost find faith within the process because being an entrepreneur is so hard. Like, it's so challenging and you're facing obstacles all the time. But I think when you stay in tune with why you're here and what hope and light and life you can bring into the world, it changes the game.
It's amazing when you stop controlling every step and give it over to God and you find such a great route for yourself that you always had there, but you were kind of putting the blinders on, forcing yourself away from it. And also, for having young children, you get this perspective, right, where everything changes, right? You think of it in your mind when it's just you. And then when you have a child, your decisions, they become a lot more complex in an interesting way because you're thinking it through not only your lens, but also their lens as well. And it makes it fun, but it puts this whole other level onto it. And entrepreneurship, it's this whole beast, right? It's you either learn to deal with the stress and understand that on the other side of that is a solution for you to find, or it completely takes you down. And coming from yourself, we've skipped over a lot because you talked about being in a trailer park in Georgia, and all of a sudden now you were at a key position in ADP and were able to get to that part there. What was that leap that got you outside there? For people that are stuck down to now, that feel like they're hopeless, have nowhere to go, right? Well, there's always hope, right? So where was that hope that came through there?
Yes, Jason. Well, first of all, I would say to the person who is feeling like that, it is not by accident that they're hearing these words right now. Like, it's not just this random fluke. We have, like you said, right? We have to actually understand that there is one who loves you greater than you've ever imagined and is guiding you on this pathway. So, I've been in that place many times. I had major depression, PTSD, suicidal ideations, all the things. But I think for me, in those seasons, what I really held close to was the one thing that I knew that I could control, right? Because I am like, my husband calls me a type AAA. Like, I am, it's like a type A personality is one thing, but I'm like a type A AAA. I think the heart surgery helps me a lot to calm down. But part of it is like acknowledging the fact that the one thing you can control in this life is your response to what happens to you, right? That's what really shows the integrity and character of a person. Like, when everything is falling apart, you're like kissing your sweet baby's face and saying, I'll see you on the other side, and going in to have your heart stopped for a 5-hour surgery. Like, you find these moments of time when you actually get to say, hold up. So I would say that for me in that season, it was really about how can I get to this place and literally say, okay, I am in this moment right now of time, and I need to find hope. And I also need to be willing to work hard to figure things out. I need to be willing to lean in and say, you know what? Like, that's how I got the job. To answer your question directly about ADP, I did 7 interviews. They were terrified to hire me. It's a total HR payroll company. And they even asked me during the interview process how old I was because I was 17 years old applying for this job. I literally messaged them and were like, okay, here's the deal. No one's going to work harder. No one's going to lean. I will stay. I will get there early. I will stay last. I will be there and all the things. And I like I feel like that's kind of what is the important thing that sometimes we lose in this space. Like sometimes that we find is really in that moment where you're like, you're not actually seeing yourself like pull through. You're not seeing that capacity to step into something new. And so I think when you're willing to just work your butt off, it makes a big difference.
It is a really big difference in the people today, especially in terms of the workforce, right? When we're hiring it, you will see people who will come in and just look for the minimum expectation. But then you see the other people that are driven, right? They're looking to make the role their own. They want to step outside of it. They want to see what other pieces of the puzzle can get there, right? And they set the standards, right? They set the standards of how they want to show up. And what are some standards that you've set in your life that potentially, weren't comfortable at first, but you put into place today that have really set the stage for who you are and where you're going?
Well, I think for me today, it's very different than how it was before. I feel like for my life, it's kind of consistently made different journeys. Like, for example, the strength you need for one battle is not the same strength you need for the next and the next and the next. You almost have to be committed to riding the waves and going to these different spaces, even when it gets hard, even when everything is coming against you. So for me at this point, I think some of the standards are really connected into what legacy do I want to leave behind? I think facing the potential end of your life, the surgery that I had, 1 in 5 people don't survive that. And it really changed me as far as like how I see the world, how I invest in things, how I move forward. So for me today, it's like from a faith perspective, as long as I'm in alignment there, everything else can be what it's going to be. I was recently hosting an event and I had tons of people there and I was doing all the things and it could have just gone so bad. Like it was like one of those moments where everything felt like it was falling apart and I felt like everything's going bad. But I literally looked up and I was like, you know what, God, as long as you're proud of me, as long as I'm doing my best for you and with you, like there's really nothing else for me to be thinking about and worrying about. So I think for me personally, learning how to move from that space of like really aligning your value system around what's the most important thing. For some people, it might be, how am I showing up as a parent? How am I showing up for my team? How am I in my relationship with my partner? And if you are in a space where you can feel that, then the beautiful thing about it is that it grounds you, right? But the challenging thing is if it's not something that you have control over, if it's something that's actually outside of your control because, maybe things fall apart. This world has many troubles. But if that's really what you're anchored on, when the storms come, you're going to feel that. So for me personally, I've shifted around to be like, I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to show up for excellence every day. I'm going to lean in. I'm going to be willing to do what unsuccessful people are unwilling to do. I'm going to do the things that are on all the postcards and the memes on social media. But for me, what really helps me move the needle in my life is like aligning with my faith first.
Love that. If someone's in the storm right now, and they're just stuck. They feel like the storm is just not passing them by, right? How can they ground themselves to find that value in their life right now? What would be some steps they could take to pull themselves out?
Well, first of all, I would say that I get it when you feel like the storm is just a storm or the tunnel that you're in is just a tunnel. I remember being so depressed and feeling like it's just a freaking tunnel. But I actually wrote a book that's coming out shortly. It's called You Can't Heal Your Life, but I Know a Guy. And it's all about where self-help fails, God prevails. And the message of the book really kind of talks people through the things that I've learned to hold on tight when everything's falling apart. One thing I would say, the easiest thing is to find a beautiful song, probably by Brandon Lake, because he's one of my favorite artists, or Forrest Frank, and get on the floor and cry and process. Wherever you are in faith, whatever you are in the journey, like reach up, because the thinking that got you where you are is not the same thinking that gets you out. You actually need a divine encounter. And the challenge is that in a world where self-help has become the most powerful message. It's been, you can do it, you can change. There's so much pressure on us to figure it out. And then we look at someone who might have gone through the same things we did. They lived in our household or they've been through similar things. And you're like, well, why are they figuring out? Why is that person selling all the real estate? And I'm not. I'm working. I'm a single parent. I'm doing all the things, right? You can feel all that pressure. But the truth for me is that if I'm not like on steady ground, then the waves do feel like they will actually swallow me whole. But for me personally, and I've faced major adversity financially, emotionally, physically, all the things, right? And I still do. But I think the difference is that when you understand that life sometimes brings moments where there's a gift in it, right? It's a gift. It's not easy, but it's not over. And you have to be willing to say, okay, life might be pushing me down, but maybe on my knees is exactly where I should be. And so for anybody who hears this and can, like, send me a message because I will happily send you a copy of my book and just encourage you on the journey because I have really struggled and I know what it's like to feel like you're out of options and, rent is due and miracles are needed and transformation is needed. And you need to walk out of your room and smile because you've got a little one looking up to you with hope and for security. So, if anything, any of the trials I've faced and how I've learned to put some practical advice around getting away from it, but most importantly, just putting words that are not my own, words that come from a Bible that was written way before me, like putting those words in your hand, like it's not just something that kind of sits there. It's something that changes everything. And I work in entertainment. I live in Hollywood. We're on this major studio lot with my studio, and I'm around people from all walks of life all the time. And the only thing that I've seen is that when adversity comes, when the world feels scary, people need something bigger than them. Things are getting so weird, like on the daily. Like if you scroll through the news, it's like, what is happening? We need something bigger than us. And I've seen more in my life than I can explain. And I know the power of it. So I'm almost like, oh my gosh, please, like if you're in that place, like jump out and you will actually get caught. But sometimes we're so afraid to step out because we don't see the floor. But faith is about believing in something unseen. And anxiety is the same thing. Everyone feels super comfortable to talk about anxiety all the time and fear, right? We were talking about it earlier. It's the same thing. It uses the same muscle. It's this muscle of what could happen, right? But why don't we replace that fear? Like one of my whole sections in my book is about starving fear and feeding faith, because you have to feed the part of you that you actually want to strengthen. And for me, I don't have an option. I plow through fear every day because I have to.
Yeah, and that's incredible because the starving the fear component right there is magical because we give into it in so many times, right? It's like, with social media, if you're constantly watching arguments or fights, right, that trends to be more into your life, right? And you have to pull yourself out of it. And there is always an option. You just have to believe there is, right? And then put the faith behind that because that leads you to the option. It's just when we close ourselves in, right? We have this world that we're exposed to everything from nature to other people around us and all these different obstacles that are in front of us. But there's always the path away. I love the line where it says, no man ever steps in the same river twice, because we try to go out, past the new problems with the same mindset that we had before. And while that worked before, right, it's like the Netflix, right? Netflix took over Blockbuster and Blockbuster went out of business because it tried to use old thinking. It's the same component with our lives, is that the world is moving at a pace. We can find our pace within this, but we have to understand that we are a new person each and every time we open our eyes. And when we bring that to the opportunities, you find that there's always a solution. And that sets the stage for you, the success you're having and everything else. So from going from Georgia, right, when, as a child to now being on Hollywood, having a studio, right, how has your mindset changed? How has your foundation been set, right, to put yourself in perspective of where you are today?
Well, I think it's changed dramatically. I was a kid when I moved to LA. My sister was on 90210 and she had done Nip Tuck, and I was helping her kind of like establish her brand. Hilariously, she was filming her show on the same lot that my studio is now on, which is
Oh,
just
how
like
cool.
such
Yeah.
a fun, like, full circle moment. Everything has changed. I think, I crave the simplicity and the specialness that I really learned about in Georgia. Like growing up in the South, you really create just this sweetness, this like community feeling. Like I want to know my neighbors. And so it doesn't always like apply in LA. LA's a little different, but I've made an incredible community here. My husband and I have been together for a long time, and he's from Kentucky originally. So I think those deep Southern roots kind of like show themselves for sure. But I think for me, like life has just been about knowing who to go to in the storm and realizing that there's always an invitation for growth. Like who I am today is very different than who I was before, but I don't think that we need to pace that out our same way. Like I'm leading a big group right now through reading the Bible in 90 days. And it's like been one of the craziest, busiest seasons of my career. And I'm just like, oh, we're doing this. But it's really interesting because I did it one time before, and talk about fear. Before that, I was dealing with like a 9 or 10 of anxiety like every single day. And after I did this whole Bible study, but like was so crazy. I was doing this this huge campaign for the Super Bowl. I was leading this big fashion trade show. I was like, what am I thinking? Reading like 20 chapters a day. But it was something about letting those words wash over me that changed everything. And I like it reduced the anxiety I felt down to like a 3 on a daily level, which was just like a total gift for my nervous system and all the things. So I think, listening to that still small voice, that little gentle prompting in your heart is a big deal. And so I think for anybody who's in any stage of their life, whether you're succeeding and maybe you're feeling a little empty, or you're facing an unimaginable storm financially, health wise, emotionally, with your family, with loss, like understanding that there's actually always an invitation. And sometimes we're so strategically busy and distracted that we actually miss what we're actually here for. So I would just tell anyone and everyone, like, success is so silly. It's like, this is all one dimensional life, this whole world, like my studio I built, like, it's like all these things we create. There's actually fundamental spiritual gifting all around us. And when we open our eyes to it, we actually see everything totally differently. And so we start to take time in such a different way. It's like more about gratitude. It's like if you're at the end of your money and you find a way to be generous, it's actually the opposite of like culture, but it is all where generosity and blessing are locked in. So we kind of have to like look at everything and just have a little bit of an upside down thinking, like, I don't know if I really agree to that. It's little things like this. Have you ever thought about the kids game Hangman? Like, I'm sorry, why aren't we questioning, right? So I like that example because of course anyone who thinks about it with like 2 grams of a brain are going to be like, of course you shouldn't have a kid playing this game. That's crazy. Yet it's still being sold on store shelves because people aren't asking these obvious questions. So I would just say, how distracted are we? How busy are we? How pulled are we? Are we sitting down and like having gratitude for every single heartbeat? We should not need to wait to encounter a moment where a surgeon stops our hearts before we actually say thank you, because you were created for a reason and you'll never know what it is if you don't go to the creator.
Yeah. A quick aside, I have a 7, 9, and 11-year-old, and I talk to them constantly. They're not on social media or any of those parts, but just being aware and present in the moment and how hard it's going to be for them. At our point, it's hard now, but just I can imagine 20 years, 30 years from now. And I tell them, when you're walking in the street or a parking lot, like pay attention. And I was in my truck pulling through a parking lot today and literally almost hit this guy because he just got out of his car and just walked right in front of me, head down into the phone. It has no idea I even existed, right? I could have ran him over and he still wouldn't even known I was there. And this part, I'm sitting there, I was like, every day I got to tell my kids, just be aware, because it is so hard in today with how fast information moves, how much is happening with the alerts going on left and right, everything in front of you. I can only imagine a decade from now, 5 years from now, just all the things that are going to come at you. But the more you can be present, it speaks to even me with my kids, right? There's a million things you can do at any moment, but the time with kids and how quickly they grow, it passes you by like this. Right. I can imagine my 11-year-old when he was 1 and now he's 11 and he's as tall as my wife. And I sit back and think about, the next 5 years, how quickly it goes, that I'm either going to be there in it. Right. And it's the same thing with you. Right. The stories that we talk about, that you hear where you are, success is fantastic, but you think back to the journey you came. Right. So you're in the journey, understand that one day you're going to be talking about, the things you've overcome to get where you are today and how magical it was, even though at the moment it felt absolutely awful, but you made it, right? You made it through and here you are today. Last question, you have this great platform that's empowering a ton of women out. What are one of the most fulfilling moments that comes to mind?
Well, for me, I think, so after my surgery, I started a faith-based apparel brand called Holy Spirit Vibe. And I think for me, it's the fact that I get to be in these very unexpected places. I've been in crazy rooms with crazy people. I'm like, who let me in? All these like total A-listers and all the things. And it's the moments in between where I'm in an airport and someone stops me and I get to pray for them. Like, I genuinely feel like that is what I'm here for. That's why I woke up that day in the hospital, and it's why I still wake up every day. There's so much more. There's so much more for all of us. And for the person who's facing major depression and suicidal ideations, I'm living proof. I'm heart beating proof that God can do a lot with very little. And so I think that for me, it's any moment where I get to speak life into people who are feeling scared. They're feeling uncertain about the future. They're parents and they're worried for their kiddos. Like, it's just being able to remind them that prayer actually genuinely works. And at any point, anywhere you are, you can reach up and say, God, if you're real, please make it totally clear. Make it absolutely undeniable. Guaranteed that is the most effective prayer I've heard many people pray, and I've seen so much. And so I think for me it's that. And I know it's totally incongruent with my career and all the things, but it's what I'm here for. And I care so much more about that. God blesses my business and I'm so grateful. And when it isn't feeling blessed, I'm still so grateful because I am not my success. I am not my background. I am not my future. I am not the physical person who sits in front of you. I'm a human who has seen the good things and is on a mission to share that in all the places that need it the most because I know that unlike anything I can ever do or create in this world, that is the one thing that actually is lasting and will change someone's genuine existence. And that's what I'm committed to.
Yeah, incredible. Thank you so much for sharing with our platform today. And for anyone who wants to hear your show or find any of your labels, what's the best place that they should learn more about you?
What a great question. The McCordlist.com has all of our production stuff. So if you want to do a show or whatever, like that would be the place to go. And then I'm on social media at I am Rachel McCord because I literally am. So it's so easy to remember. So send me a message, send my team a message. And yeah, we like, especially if you're hurting, like DM me, like let me bless you. That's what I want
Love
to
it.
do.
Amazing. Rachel, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Jason.
Everyone here, this is the Live Wonder Podcast. I'm Jason Yarusi. Let's do this.